This is Keys to the Shop, Founder Friday edition. Today we're talking with Kyle Wells of Torpedo Coffee in Denver, Colorado. Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Keys to the Shop, where we give you insights, inspiration, and the tools you need to grow as a coffee service professional. My name is Chris DeFurio. I'm your host for the show. Welcome, and this is a very interesting episode today because we have a two-part Founder Friday. This is the first time and not the last time we're going to be doing part one, which is before they are opened and getting their thoughts about what's going to come up and what their hopes and dreams are for the space. And then part two, after about 6 months or so, maybe longer, what is it like to own a business and how did your expectations pan out? All of those things are covered in this episode and much more. It's really insightful. So I'm excited to share it with you. Kyle Wells of Torpedo Coffee, Denver, Colorado. A great new coffee bar. Great guy, and we're going to get to talk with him about his journey as a coffee shop owner. So stay tuned for that. Now, you know, a show like this really depends on great sponsors, and I want to take a moment to thank them, starting with Prima Coffee, of course. Prima is a leading specialty coffee equipment supplier. They curate the best equipment from around the world. They fit that perfectly with the needs of both their professional and enthusiast customers. Just helping you make great coffee at home or in your shop is what drives them. So if you're in a position where you're just looking for a great home bar setup, they can help you. But if you're also in a position of opening a new coffee bar, the subject of our talk today, then they can also help you with great commercial equipment and expertise to go along with it. So if you're looking for the best there is to offer from a great crew of people who are dedicated to your success, then I would encourage you to look no further than prima-coffee.com. That's prima-coffee.com. Visit them on their website, get in contact with them, email, phone call, let them know that Keys to the Shop sent you. And my thanks to Prima Coffee for their support of Keys to the Shop. This episode is also brought to you by the wonderful people at Pacific, specifically the Barista Series, the line of plant-based performance beverages that are designed specifically for professional baristas and the standards for excellence that they demand. Whether you're talking about their almond, soy, coconut, rice, or oat milk, its ability to take the heat from steaming, produce an unmatched silky texture, and keep the flavor balance of your coffee focused on coffee makes it a perfect choice for your cafe's menu. Pacific is a huge supporter of baristas and of the specialty coffee culture globally. These products are born from collaboration with professionals, and they're just a testimony to that fact. So I would encourage you to go to pacificfoods.com, learn more about how the Barista Series line of plant-based performance beverages can really help elevate your non-dairy options in the cafe. Thank you very much, Pacific, for your support. Keys to the Shop. Okay, so today we get to talk with Kyle Wells of Torpedo Coffee in Denver, Colorado. Torpedo Coffee is a locally owned coffee shop in Park Hill neighborhood of Denver, and is really an actualization of Kyle's dream. After years of working in corporate America, Kyle Wells decided to give up his secure and kind of mundane life of working in a large company, and he really dreamed of opening a coffee shop with his wife and partner, Pauline Wells. They'd already experienced small business success with their salon, Let 'Em Have It, his wife Pauline being a hairstylist. So when the perfect spot became available in Oneida Park, they jumped on it. Kyle remembered a quote from his Navy days as inspiration for making this really big first step. And the quote was from a rear admiral named Farragut in the Battle of Mobile Bay. The quote was, "Damn the torpedoes, full speed ahead." And that's kind of the mantra that Kyle and Pauline have in opening this shop, taking on the risk of small business ownership, just going full speed ahead for this dream of owning and running this great coffee business. So Torpedo Coffee is all about coffee, community, and connections, and it's basically great coffee without the attitude. Their desire is to inspire community to just go for it, full speed ahead. And they want other people to do the same thing that they are doing currently and have done, which is to pursue their dreams. And you'll see that this coffee, community, and connections theme with Torpedo Coffee is something that is really taking shape with the way the shop has been going for the past 7 months. We dive into all sorts of topics in this conversation with Kyle, talking about the staffing, what kind of things changed over the course of the last 7 months that he didn't expect would change? What kind of things could he not prepare for but just needed to experience? What does the shop look like now versus the business plan that they started with? There's a lot of unknowns in starting a business, and the growth of a business is a mystery even to those starting it. So we explore all those little points in this conversation. So I hope that this before and after interview with Kyle really helps you in your journey as a coffee entrepreneur. And so let's get right to our conversations. First with Kyle before they opened Torpedo, and next with Kyle after they opened Torpedo. And they'll be played back to back. And here now is Kyle Wells of Torpedo Coffee.
So we're here at Denver Coffee Fest in high elevation with Kyle Wells, who is getting ready to open a store, a coffee shop named Torpedo Coffee, which is an awesome name, and I'm sure we're going to hear all about that. How are you, Kyle?
I'm good, thanks. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for having me in your city. This has been really fun.
Yeah.
We've passed each other in the hallway here and there. I got to meet you for the first time. You're a listener to the show, so thank you for that. And
yeah, great show.
Yeah, thanks. This has been a fun show, and you've been taking some classes here just in preparation for getting your store open. Has it been a good weekend so far?
It has, yeah. It's been a great weekend to see different concepts that you don't really understand when you're looking at them online, seeing people's booths and then going to the classes. Has been good to reinforce some things that I thought I knew, or reinforce the things that I did know. So
it's always a combination.
That's been good.
Of the two.
Yeah,
good. I'm interested to know, so this background I know, but the listeners don't. Your background and how you decided to start a coffee shop. It's always a fun story of how people arrive. So what's your story?
My story, I guess, long way getting there, but way back when I was in the Navy and drank the mud coffee that they had in the Navy there, right? And never really thought too much about the coffee, but always enjoyed it and what the benefits it would bring in terms of keeping me up for a midnight watch. But from there, after I got out of the Navy, I moved into a corporate job and just have been doing that for the last 20 years. And it kind of found me. I wasn't really looking for whatever the job was. I kind of fell into it. I did well in my job, but it was never anything that I was passionate about. And as I'm getting older and decided I wanted to look for something else, my wife and I have a salon as well. And so for the last 5 years, I've been introduced to more of an entrepreneurial side of life.
I'm sure that's been exciting.
It has. It's been very exciting. And so as that's been going on, I continue to evaluate what would I want to do. And as I've been going to coffee shops over the years and seeing the rise of specialty coffee and kind of that third wave, that's always been something that was very interesting to me. And so I started reading more about it probably in the last 6-7 years and continued to kind of do my home brewing and different things there, geeking out on coffee. And as I started to think about what would I want to do? What would I want to continue to do every day that wasn't IT and corporate, coffee shop came up. And one of the things that I really thought would be good there was how can I make a connection with people and not just be over the cubicle wall and not I work from home a lot, or I travel a lot, and I don't really interact with a lot of people. And so having kind of that more personal human connection, I thought having a coffee shop would be a great way to do that.
Yeah. And so your background now in having this salon, is that made it easier to kind of embrace some of the principles that you're learning about running coffee shops as you're at Coffee Fest and you look at material helping you get to the point where you're open?
For sure. The experience that we had in the build-out phase and just architecture, working with a general contractor, the lease, all the things that go with that of having a brick-and-mortar shop, having the salon definitely prepared us for a lot of those things. And maybe some of the missteps or some of the challenges of the people we ran into early on with the salon, we were able to learn from that.
Okay, so preemptively planning on, this could happen because it did happen. that last time, so let's make sure it doesn't happen again.
For sure.
Or that was a really good idea. We should do that times 10 over here
Yes.
in the coffee shop. So Torpedo Coffee, the name is pretty cool.
Thanks.
You've got great branding. I like your Instagram. We should all follow you on Instagram. What is behind that name? I feel like it has to do something with the Navy.
So there is, as I mentioned, I was in the Navy. I was in the engine room when I was in the Navy on a destroyer out of Pearl Harbor. And so there is a little bit of that. I like kind of some of the design and some of those things from, say, World War II propaganda and that kind of thing. But really, as I thought about my journey and what I wanted to do, when I tell people that I want to leave corporate and leave this job that, say, has a pension and maybe is a little bit more secure, people think I'm crazy. And so one of the things that I always say is, damn the torpedoes, as in there's an old naval saying, I won't bore you with the story behind it, but this admiral, as he was going into this battle, they said they were firing torpedoes. He said, damn the torpedoes, full speed ahead, as in, we're doing it. We're going to go ahead and take this journey and do this adventure. So that's what it is.
Yeah. And are you glad that you did that?
I am. I'm very glad. It's been an interesting ride over the last couple years, really. We've been looking at this location for probably about 2 years now.
Oh, wow.
And so we were able to finally nail it down about last October, November timeframe.
Nice.
And
that's a long time to be kind of looking over a space. Somebody was in it before, they just got out now. What's the story there?
Actually, it was an open space. Just the landlord or the owners that had owned the space before a couple years ago, they were trying to sell the property, and so I think it got hung up in the sale for a while. And when the new owners came in, they happened to have the same idea that we did in terms of having a coffee shop in the specific space that we were looking at.
Nice.
So we talked to them quite a few times and were able to come to terms on what we wanted to do there. So
nice. So describe the concept in like when you're operating Torpedo Coffee. Now you want to be open by I think August, September.
Yeah, it'll probably be mid-August. We'll do a soft opening,
Okay.
and yeah, kind of grand opening first part of September, Labor Day-ish.
Yeah. So what is it that you want people to experience when they walk into the store and tell their friends, like, hey, I went to Torpedo? It's like, fill in the blank.
It's like, well, so it's if I was to choose a couple words, it's probably industrial nautical, which is a little bit strange, being that we're landlocked here in Denver, but so it will have some hints of nautical things, but also there is industrial without being too rustic. But at the same time, it still will have some warmth to it. And I don't want it to be that idea of I've just got to have the turnover and I'm not going to offer Wi-Fi or not offer a place for somebody to come in and, read if they wanted or have their laptop out or whatever.
Yeah.
One thing that my wife and I talk about a lot is the 3 C's with Torpedo Coffee, and that's coffee, connections, and community.
Oh,
and
wow. Okay.
so the coffee shop is actually 8 blocks from our house, so it's going to be an awesome commute.
Nice.
For me. But we really wanted to build on the community there, and continue to be able to meet our neighbors and have our folks that we know and are in the surrounding Denver area. Come in. We've got a school, a culinary school, and a high school right there. So just continuing to build those connections with people in the community.
How does coffee factor into that? Is it a saturated market? Is it a not saturated market?
It's not too saturated. We've got a couple bakeries that do coffee on the side. There's a Starbucks, which doesn't really scare me at all. There's a
Sure.
Starbucks probably a mile and a half away or so. And then we've got a couple third wave shops or more kind of specialty shops that are also in a 2 to 3 mile area. But I always feel coffee's very much about convenience and how close you are to somebody, and as you build that brand, right? Are you willing to make the journey? And that's what we want to continue to do is have that word of mouth where people say, yeah, you got to go check out Torpedo.
So to build on the connection part of this, connecting with people, and that builds community when you connect with them. what are some plans that you're hoping to put in place in this shop that guarantees the people that work for you are going to have those same values? Like what's the ideal Torpedo employee going to be like? What are their values? And I imagine that's a lot like what your values are when it comes to relationships.
Yeah, when I think about it, at our salon, Let 'Em Have It salon, it's a certified B Corp. Ultimately, we want to get Torpedo there as well. But so if you think about the sustainability aspect of a B certified company, that's definitely a top on the list. Another one that we always talk about at the salon and that we want to have and engender at Torpedo is compassion as well.
Okay.
And really, I, for lack of a better way of saying it, is down to earth, right? We want to be able to not be intimidating. If you want to come in and learn about a single origin, micro lot, geisha, or something that's, maybe a little bit unapproachable for the average Joe off the street, or you just want a cup of coffee, cool. I want to do either of those and have the employees be able to talk to people about that, know the people in the community, know the people in the neighborhood, remember who people are. It shouldn't just be a, hey, I want your $5 for my cup of coffee, and
I want your $5.
Yeah.
I want my $2.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So do you find that that's a problem with coffee, is not being kind of warm, not being accessible, that maybe makes people feel a little standoffish when especially like third wave coffee?
I think it depends on the shop. I do think that there are times where, and it's been very apparent at Coffee Fest this weekend, sometimes in the classes behind closed doors where you have a lot of other folks that maybe aren't as experienced in the industry. I was in a class yesterday, and there were people asking, what does single origin mean? Or what are these different things? And I feel like some of those things I may know about from reading about it, but I don't have that experience in coffee. And there are times where it does feel, going into a shop, that maybe I don't want to ask those questions, and I don't ever want that to be where somebody feels like that coming into my shop. So
right.
I want to be able to have that open dialogue about these things. Coffee is so nuanced, and when you think about all the different things, I compare it to wine a lot, because you think about the terroir of wine and all those different things that come with coffee.
Yeah.
I don't think a lot of people think about that, and when you get deeper into it, it's pretty cool. Now, as you can tell, I could geek out on it all day, but at the same time, let's just talk about what's going on in the neighborhood too, right? Those are the types of things that I want to be able to do at the shop.
Facilitates community. It itself is not the point for most people.
Right.
It's kind of they just want to wake up. They might not be a coffee geek.
Right.
They just can be a good customer.
Sure.
Right.
Exactly. And that's okay too.
So your menu, that's a big part of opening a shop, because it determines so much of your build out and people's expectations, what they can get. Describe to us what your menu, the way you envision it right now.
So, and it's a great point. As we were going through this, one of the things that we really liked, we've got a coffee shop very close to the salon. One of the things we liked about that coffee shop was some of the grab and go aspect of the food. It was quick, but good food, local stuff. We thought that's something that we'd like to carry over into the coffee shop. And as you're thinking about it, right, you don't necessarily have the budget or the space, and for us it was a little bit of both, to build out a full kitchen. And so when we were thinking about what is our target market, college kids, high school kids, the vet that's next door, we've got an auto shop that's over there, what are those folks going to want to come over and get for, say, a quick lunch? That was one of the big things, was what does that look like for grab-and-go food? What does it look like for coffee? We wanted to have kind of your standard fare in terms of coffee drinks, maybe not getting too crazy into all the blended drinks, even though I hear quite a bit that the high school market may dictate some of that for me, but so we'll see where that goes.
Okay.
But I also want to be able to offer, if you want to explore different types of coffee, I want to get a little bit into that. The batch brewers anymore are so much more advanced that I feel like you can pull a pretty good drip coffee.
Sure. Yeah.
That maybe you don't, and I know you've talked about it on the show before. Of, do we offer pour over or not, right? And that's one of the things that I feel like I want to have it, but at the same time, maybe it's a secret menu item or something like that, right? Where you don't offer it every day because you may not have the labor or the time to support it.
We'll take you in back. We'll make it. You follow me into the mop closet. And we'll
exactly.
make it. Don't tell anyone.
Right.
So there's that food aspect, and then there's the coffee, all kind of based on what you imagine the needs of your community are.
Yes.
The product can be so good, and I imagine there's, the training is going to be a big part of that. But the hospitality is going to be another aspect, and part of that comes down to leadership. What kind of leader do you want to be in the coffee shop as a future owner of a shop, and then the one that everyone looks up to? What do you think is really important for you to bring to the table for people to really do a good job in the store?
If I was to boil it down to a couple words, I think it's probably approachability and transparency. And I've managed people for a long time throughout my career, and I always felt like I want it to be very much, the cliche is open door policy, but having that where somebody can come in and sit down and let's just talk about whatever. Never that command and control, never the top-down leadership. That to me just doesn't work. I've been managed that way.
Oh, I'm sure. You were in the military.
Yes. And that's just not what we ever want to strive for there. It's got to be much more of a I hate to ever be a manager, right? I don't want to manage people. I'd like to lead people. I want to be able to ask the right questions, and why I say that is not have all the answers, right? I want to be able to develop people and have them understand find the answers themselves, because that to me makes a future leader so much better, right? And for the longest time when I was managing people, I always thought I had to be the guy with all the answers, and so I was always making sure I could tell everybody what they wanted to know, whether it was about some system or some technical thing or whatever. But in the last years of my career managing people, being able to drive to the question and having the employee understand what they were looking for and asking the right questions was much better than ever giving them the answer.
Right. Hey, you could put yourself into a situation where you kind of burn out trying to be the all for everyone.
Completely agree.
Yeah.
And I think the other big thing is I know that I don't know a lot here, and I want people to come in with their ideas as well. It's got to be a kind of a crowdsourced coffee shop, right? In the sense that, hey, if this thing isn't working, if we're not seeing this sell, great. What else do we think may be something that people are into?
Leaning on your authority as the owner is something that I feel like a lot of people will want to do, especially getting closer to open, because you're going to want more control over what's happening to mitigate loss or something not going the way you want it to go because you have so much invested. So it's really interesting to hear you talk about it. Obviously, you've got a lot of experience leading people, being under leadership, so it's really important, I think, that we take something away there. Anyone who's on their way to opening a store listening to this probably is feeling that gut check, hopefully, that, maybe I'm clinging a little too tightly for dear life at this point, which makes me want to ask this next question, which is being so close to opening and going through this journey, going from dreaming 2.5 years ago, and now you're like so close. What advice would you give to people who are thinking about opening a coffee shop, driving by a space at all hours, trying to do the foot traffic count and all that stuff? What would you say is the most important thing for them to realize or put into action?
That's a great question. I think I'm stumped because you freaked me out that I'm so close. No, I'm kidding. I think to me it's really start to boil down what your concept is. What is it that you want to offer, right? What the first thing that a landlord or a potential landlord or commercial real estate or anybody or funding, right? If you're going to a bank for funding, first thing they ask is, what does this mean? What is it going to be? What's your concept, right? And sure, you may have written something up in your executive summary for your business plan, or you may have all of those things, but you need to have that elevator pitch nailed down and quickly. And I think that was one thing 2.5 years ago where I had probably 10 different ideas, and I had that list of 300 different names that I thought I might name the coffee shop, and that was always swirling around my head. And when I first started talking to people 2.5 years ago, I probably told each of them a different concept. And as we've gotten closer and really kind of boiling that down, I'd say spend the time to come up with what you want that to be. Early on, I thought it was all specialty all the time. I had to be able to talk about every aspect of single origin and everything else. It's so not what I want to do now, and just know that you're going to evolve. Give yourself some room for that. As you nail down what that elevator pitch is, maybe make it a little bit more generic so that you can evolve into something as you get closer to opening, because it does change. There are compromises you will make.
Wise words. Very wise. That's because people do cling to the original idea because the bank said yes to that one thing, right? And so now we can't do anything different. This is what we have to do forever.
Right.
Great. Well, this has really been cool to get to know a little bit more about you and the concept and the store, and be waiting anxiously to see everything come together. I've been following your progress on Instagram with different build outs. And where are you in the process now? Like the floors being laid, or
yeah, we polished the floors about a week ago, and so they just started framing Thursday and Friday of this week. So
okay, well, here we go.
Yeah.
Damn the torpedoes.
Full speed ahead.
Here we go. Yeah. So thank you so much. This was really fun, and I'm glad to have gotten to meet you here at Coffee Fest.
It was great meeting you as well.
Okay, so that was Kyle at Coffee Fest in June before opening their coffee shop, and now here is Kyle 7 months after opening Torpedo Coffee. Let's tune in to find out what he has to say about how things have been going and what he's learned in the process. Hey Kyle, welcome back to Keys to the Shop. How are you today?
Doing pretty good. Thanks. How are you?
I'm doing well. We were just chatting about the craziness of the shop. Just even today, it was just kind of like a real busy day for you, working the bar, doing stuff with suppliers. Sounds like kind of normal shop life, right?
For sure. Yeah, it's become my everyday now, so that's good. I'm happy to be ingrained in it.
Yes. Well, so what? You opened your shop, and it's been what? It's been 6 months now, right? It was it November?
7. We just actually we hit 7 months in last week. So
oh yes, great! Congratulations.
So, yeah, we did kind of a soft opening September 19th, and which was good because midway through that first week we had some power issues or electrical issues that we thought we had taken care of, but still run into things, once everything's on full power and all the refrigeration's running. And so it was good that we did soft so we could shut down for a day and kind of get people back in there, and then reopened and waited probably a couple weeks before we did our grand opening.
Right. So since we talked last, that process of going from concept to build out, you had already secured your space, and then you started the build out. Talk to us a little bit about the process of building that space out at Torpedo. You mentioned there were some issues that you had to address after you had the soft opening. Was it a relatively smooth process from the time that we met in Denver till the soft opening, or were there some things that were pretty challenging?
There were some challenges. I won't say it was, well, as you could tell, it wasn't insurmountable, but it was working with the city, especially, I think anybody working with the city is going to run into similar challenges around permitting and all the different acronyms that come with the permits that you have to secure as part of this, and all the things that I quite frankly didn't think we were going to have to do. I knew zoning, but I didn't know about an SDP or a TCR or all these different things that came up. And what I mean by some of these things are site development plan or tables, chairs, and rails, right, of the TCR, or things that you don't really think through when you're first kind of getting into all of this and writing your business plan or securing the funding. And so there's timelines that I know you and I talked about early on that, and I was just going back and listening to some of that we thought August when we were talking at that point. And at one point I was even thinking May that we were going to get that done. And I think the biggest thing there was just building in, or maybe not even building in, but just being ready to say, okay, the date slipped again. Especially if you're in an area, and that's what I was going to touch on earlier, like Denver, where we've got a huge amount of growth, a large influx of people coming here. And so the city was rather behind in their permitting and inspections, to the point where they even brought in a third-party contractor to help get through some of that.
So you were kind of lost in the shuffle just a little bit.
Yeah. There's I can't even tell you how many cranes I see up at any given time, kind of around the city when you look out. If you're in a higher part of town, to see that how many places are currently under construction, and by cranes, they're massive places. So yeah, those typically are taking precedent probably over a small strip mall shop.
Mm-hmm. Well, I love that you mentioned being open to pushing your date back, because there's sort of an artificial, most deadlines in this situation are somewhat artificial. They're created to give resistance to you, and so you have something to push against, right? But it's not like a religion, you don't absolutely have to open on that day if it doesn't make sense to you. So it's good that you kind of were flexible that way.
Completely. And it really worked out in my favor, just because I was trying to balance I'm leaving my corporate job, and when am I going to make that announcement and give my, notice, and how is that going to work? And at one point it was going to be Memorial Day weekend that we were going to try to target. And it really worked out well to not quit and, provide notice at that point, because lo and behold, with the company, because we were delayed, the company I was leaving actually also was offering voluntary separation packages. And so I was able to then take advantage of the severance package.
Wow. That's some serendipity right there.
For sure. And so that really helped out nicely.
Well, excellent news. So you eventually announced it to them that, hey, I'm leaving and this is what I'm doing. I assume that went well.
It went okay. I wasn't as forthcoming around opening the shop, because at that point I just was kind of like, I'm leaving, and I didn't know what all was going to be involved with that. It was more just taking advantage of the severance, and there was about a 30-day notice period, so it worked out fine. But yeah, most of the people that I still keep in touch with, they are all very happy for me now, and a lot of them all showed up at the grand opening, so that was great.
Yeah, come in, buy some coffee.
Yeah.
Well, so describe to us the first day, and I mean the soft opening, because I imagine that's got to be pretty surreal to imagine, to just stand in the space and have your first customer come in and serve them the coffee. You've been working so hard at this. What does that feel like? Describe that to us.
Yeah, leading up to it, I really kept thinking, I'm going to be that guy, that business that has that dollar that's signed on the wall, that first customer, and I'm going to make sure I memorialize this and track that and do something around, kind of this event. Quite frankly, I can't tell you who that first customer was. I don't know. I can't remember now at this point, but it was, leading up to it, hiring people, as you've kind of alluded to, leading up to this, there's a lot of things that you put on yourself and you get stressed out about. And one of those for me was my team. And who was I going to have in place? And being that I was coming from a corporate desk job and not working behind a bar, and not really working in food and bev since I was a teenager, I was pretty freaked out about that. And so I was really put it on myself that I had to hire somebody that was a barista and that's been a barista and, has been in the business and has done it, and they're going to be able to show me, and all of those types of things. Mm-hmm. I did end up hiring a woman who was a barista, had probably 4 or 5 years of experience, and she was great for that first week when we opened, and she ended up pursuing other opportunities. But it was good to have her there, at least for a couple of those first couple drinks. But I think a lot of the things that I knew I wanted to do, in terms of, here's how I'm going to have the batch. I know at this timing, I'm going to, even if I still have coffee, I'm pulling it because I would want to have the freshest coffee available. And we had decided we're not going to do pour overs, or, here's what we're going to offer on espresso, and how we're going to dial it in, and all those different pieces that all worked out well. I think it was more just, wow, it's September and more people are ordering ice drinks than I thought would happen, or blended drinks were coming up, and I thought, okay, I've read you can use a sauce or you can use a powder, and which one? So I had everything, and I definitely overbought on things for that first opening, and ended up scaling things back afterwards.
Okay, so you got your team secured, and your team now is how many people?
So I've got 2 full-time and 2 part-time, not including me. So including me, it's 5 people.
So you're on bar like how much during the week?
I've actually been able to scale that back quite a bit. My 2 full-timers are great. They were not with me when we first opened. They probably came in about a month or so after. We cycled through a couple different people when we first opened. And the 2 full-timers are both, one used to have her own shop, and the other one has come from a very busy shop that was up in hospital in Minneapolis.
Awesome. Cool. So when does the finished product look like? You mentioned that you had a lot of stuff. You scaled back a little bit. And when we come into the shop and we see what you've got, what is the experience of Torpedo Coffee presently?
I think that the big thing, maybe just to back up a second, Chris, is be ready for the evolution of the shop, because just like through your process going from the business plan to funding to build out all of those pieces, and you kind of evolve or make small compromises or decide on changes. Similar here, it's once we opened, I think everything that we were providing in terms of food was prepared somewhere else, meaning baked goods, breakfast burritos, sandwiches, salads, whatever we were offering. And what I found out is we were offering a lot more than a lot of other shops, almost to my detriment at times, right, where it was too much of a diverse menu. And so I guess I mean by that is be ready for that evolution. There are times when people walk in that, and still even now, where you kind of can tell that customer is a little bit overwhelmed with the number of choices and the number of menu options that are there. And so we went through that process, because as people were coming in, we were realizing, okay, there's certain grab and go that people just weren't buying, and some of those pre-made sandwiches or pre-made salads that just don't have a long shelf life. And you realize, you know what? I don't know why I didn't think we could prep these. And we've got a very small back room, a very small prep space in the kitchen, but or in the back room area. It's not really even a kitchen, but we were able to then make some changes, all based on the input from the team of, we can make, these 3 or 4 different types of salads based on this limited amount of ingredients. So we're not taking up a lot of refrigerator space. Or we can do these sandwiches and cook them in a turbo chef. We don't have to also have a panini press, which then freed up some kitchen space. So we were able to have more prep area. So that all helped. And so my point of telling you all that is, that's where we're at now. Of as people come into the space, it is a rather bright space. It is pretty light colored. It's not the stark, ultra modern kind of white that you see on some coffee shops where it's pretty minimalist. There's a lot of art on the walls and light blue walls. It's pretty inviting. We have had quite a few customers tell us that they like how inviting it is or how warm it feels, and which is good because even though I know I mentioned earlier or on the last time we talked about a nautical kind of industrial feel, there are elements of that. And so people can kind of still make that association, but it's not on the nose of, hey, you're in a ship type of thing. You're still at a coffee shop, which feels good, and, you know, good music, and hang out and have a good drink, or, you know, don't hang out and take it to go. But
great. So some of those compromises were not really compromises, they were just optimizations, and it sounds like you were looking at it from the perspective of, like, what is the customer experience right now? Like, you were really tuned into watching them as they came in to say, okay, what's working, what's not working, and you're pivoting quickly. It's only been 7 months, but you're changing things based on that feedback.
Completely. And I think the other piece is being open to that feedback from your team. You know, as we talked about the last time, going into this, I really wanted to go into this of, I'm not the answer guy on everything. I wanted to be the guy with the questions and have my team kind of help me. And for the most part, that has been really, really good. And they've been able to tell me and steer me in different directions of, like, why are you buying so much of, you know, these grab and go containers? Because we don't have the storage, for one, and two, you know, we're just not selling that many sandwiches that go in that type of container. Or, hey, we can get this paper that works just as well as some of these other, you know, things, or, you know, whatever the food items I was talking about earlier. That those are all things that have also all come from the staff and have helped me to evolve, so that we have that best, like you said, optimized experience for the customer. One thing that I think has been great is, because I came from a background of not really interacting with, say, the public. I was interacting with a lot of internal customers in my old job. Having my team that have both worked in shops before, and kind of seeing how they interact, of explaining, here's this menu, here's where we have these other things. When we first opened, I was always kind of leaving it to the customer. You can see I've got a coffee menu behind me. You can see the food menu here.
Yeah.
But helping to kind of guide the customer actually is really, really beneficial. And I will say, you do have to kind of gauge the customer and where they're at. There have been times where I start to explain the menu and I can watch customer glaze over, or they'll give me the kind of, I'm in a hurry. But at the same time, a lot of customers really want to hear, what do you have to offer, without having to go and read through the whole thing, because they know that you're waiting for them to order.
Oh, yeah. Those are all so good. Those points are so good. I mean, because the agility of you and your team, not just with optimizing the coffee shop itself, but paying attention to the cues of the customer, even face-to-face at the register, is so huge. And it's easy to put yourself in a position where you've worked so hard, you fall prey to the what they call the sunk cost syndrome, where you have put so much money and effort into this concept the way it is, that you almost want to force it onto people out of pride, in a sense.
Right.
So
yeah.
What were some of the things, or what was a thing, I guess, that in spite of being prepared for everything that you can think of, you just had to experience? You couldn't prepare for it, but it happened. And now on the other side of it, you're like, well, there's no way I could have anticipated or prepared for that.
I think probably a rush was one of the big things that I really tried to prepare for it. I think you and I talked early on. We talked on the phone, and well before we met at Coffee Fest. And I remember you had said, whatever you can do to help speed yourself up in terms of timing and that kind of thing will be good for you once you get to the shop. And especially because I hadn't come from a background of doing this before. And that was also one of the reasons why I was really keen on having somebody that was a barista in the past. But when we got to the grand opening, the girl that I had hired as a barista, that had the experience, happened to be not available that day. And
oh no,
it was me and my two part-timers who were both young, or late teens, and had, each of them had worked at one other food job for not a very long time. And so it was the three of us behind the bar, and, going into it with processes that were maybe 3 weeks old. So I didn't have a lot of awesome workflow or even, policy and procedure on how we're going to do these things. And so experiencing that rush, for as much as I could prep for it and time myself and, pour a latte and do those things, actually being in it and having things like, hey, the steam wand on the right side, which is the optimal side for this position, wasn't working that day. And so now we've got to shift to the left. And, just all those different types of things. Or, yeah, for some reason, the quantity button just isn't working whenever we're trying to ring up certain things. And so people kept forgetting, if they'd order 2 lattes, it would only come up as 1. And so I was making 1 latte a lot and having to read that back to the customer. But it's being in it and reacting to those things and having to think on your feet, that you could have told me that, every time we talked, and I don't think I would have been ready for it until I was in it.
So true. And it's unique because the customer's requests are unique. Your space is untested. And
right.
Now it's like, to, I guess, use a nautical term, that you've kind of proven its seaworthiness over the course of these last 7 months. So imagine these things have changed. The way your workflow has changed, or the way you approach rushes has been informed by all those rushes you've experienced.
Yes, completely. And it's interesting how we have evolved into this really 2-person bar, but whereas when we first opened, it was always, I've got to have 3 people because register is dedicated and then bar is dedicated. And now I need somebody who's kind of managing the food with the turbo chef, or, grabbing baked goods or whatever those other, or brewing, doing the batch or whatever comes up. I think we're at a point now where it gets crazy when we are really slammed with 2 people. And so we have now added a 3rd person back on say Friday mornings when we know we're going to really get hit. But for the most part, it becomes this orchestration between 2 people. I mean, the amount of nonverbal cues that happen are amazing to me. For as much as I want to be able to say, yeah, these are all the things that we do so that we can talk to each other without talking. Those are all things that I'm trying to write into, our overall handbook, so that we can look back at that and know that, okay, when you place the cups this way, that means this, or something as small as the burrito wrappers, right? Because the burritos all look the same once you take them out of the wrapper, but if you put them this way, then you can cook 2 at a time and still know which one was sausage and which one was green chili.
So important. Got to get those burritos right. And I love the intangibles that come along with getting to know each other on the way the place forms you and you form the place, and you're just more efficient when you're more familiar. And it's great to work a shift where that rush happens and you have not really talked a lot. You've intuited a lot of what you need to do based on the customers, the way they're standing, what they're looking at. Oh, I can tell they're looking for the tea. I should just get some hot water ready, and bingo, there's a tea. How did you make it so fast? Well, we know the future. We've seen this before.
Right on. I mean, it's our decaf. I've only got the espresso grinder up front, and it's a single K30, and so if we're doing decaf, we have to run to the back where the EK is and pull pull it from there. And so, but I think we're all so keyed into like when somebody says decaf or half calf, all right, get to the back because we got to get that shot up and ready to go. But it's hearing those little things, but yeah, also the body language of, well, I'm going to do this, or it's going to be the stereo alternative, or, those different things. It is pretty crazy how much you get clued into that or keyed into that.
Yeah. So when we talked before, you had mentioned the 3 C's, kind of the values that you wanted your shop to embody. That was the coffee, connections, and community. How is that shaped up as people have gotten to experience your business? This is something that you held as like, I want Torpedo to be a place for coffee, connections, and community. What does that look like right now for you?
I think it's probably a bigger emphasis, for as much as we are a coffee shop, it's probably a bigger emphasis on community and connections, and coffee's there. Don't get me wrong. I mean, it's still the underlying piece of all of this, but there are a number of folks that are coming in, doing meetings that are in the neighborhood, or neighborhood folks that are bringing somebody in from another neighborhood, that are making those connections. I think that's happening. The number of folks that were just like me, that were, say, work from home people that are just looking to get out of the house, that are want to have a connection with somebody, even if it's just talking to me quickly behind the bar or talking to one of the team. We see that quite a bit. And then we've also got, a couple schools here. So we've got a lot of folks that are coming in and from the community. And I feel like making those connections. I know so many more. I can't tell you how many of my neighbors that are close, probably in a 2 to 3 block vicinity around the house, that they now know me and I now know them, that I've probably seen them, in the 10 years that we've lived here, but just hadn't really communicated that much. And now it has provided this avenue for me and them to get to know each other better. And of course, still with coffee, I don't mean to trivialize that. It's still very much about coffee. Not everybody's drinking coffee. Or I think the other thing that I has been somewhat of a revelation to me is not everybody really cares about coffee as much as I want to, or I want them to. So I'm not talking about coffee as much as I maybe thought I would originally, but that's perfectly okay.
Yeah, that's a bitter cup to drink right there.
Yeah.
But it is definitely so powerful that your space can function to connect people, and it's almost like this unspoken desire that people confirm that they had once they start coming, because otherwise they wouldn't come if they didn't have the need or the want to connect with each other and with the community. And I love that you're able to see that taking shape around your neighborhood, and with students. You're creating an accessible space too, something that's approachable for employees and customers. Have you experienced that as a reality right now? Or like you mentioned in the beginning, of people, there's a lot of choices. People might feel intimidated, but overall, has the approachability of Torpedo lived up to what you expected or wanted it to be?
It really has. I think that's one of the things that I'm very proud of, is that we actually, there's a local magazine or free newspaper, I guess it's called Westward here. I don't know what it's called in all the different places, but it's I think in Seattle it's The Stranger, or different places. But anyway, they just did their Best of Denver, and we actually just were awarded Reader's Choice Best New Coffee House.
Nice, congrats.
Yeah, from that, and it wasn't there. Westward didn't say we were, somebody else, another local shop that had opened around the same time. They received it from Westward, but being Reader's Choice, I was actually probably more proud of that, because that is one of the dominant themes that I see in our Yelp or Google reviews, or just people talking to us when they come in, is really friendly staff, and warm, inviting, those types of words that make me happy that's what people are viewing us as, and it doesn't feel overwhelming or intimidating or anything like that, where it's causing somebody to be freaked out a little bit. It's funny when we get people that come in, and I don't necessarily have a mocha listed on the menu, but we've got that chocolate listed in the syrups, and I'll have people that are like almost embarrassed to ask, could you make a mocha? Sure, yeah, whatever you want, we'll make it. And so I think it's that kind of thing where it's not that it doesn't have that intimidating, like, no, coffee is never with chocolate, you can't do that, or that kind of thing. So yeah, it's been good.
Sort of like Danny Meyer of Union Square Hospitality Group, of course, wrote the book Setting the Table. His biggest point of pride was that his restaurants, even though they can get voted number one sometimes in newspapers and online, Zagat consistently rated them as the most popular, or the one that was the people's favorite. And that award was something that was more meaningful to Danny and to their team, because it meant that they had won over some hearts for the people, not just based on their technical prowess, which is good, but based on some kind of a deeper connection.
Yeah. I can't remember which episode you had talked about. I think you have an episode where you talk about the different books that you were recommending, and that Setting the Table was one that not long after I listened to that episode, I actually downloaded that on audiobook and was listening to that probably 6-8 months before we really started getting into the build out. Just really all that, what you just mentioned, and also a big takeaway for me from that one was, sure, you're going to make mistakes. There are things that happen, but it's how you own the experience with that customer and how you resolve it that then decides in that customer's mind whether or not they're coming back and how their experience was. And so that is something that we continue to strive for. That, okay, yep, we didn't meet your needs. How can we? What can we do to make it better? All of those types of things were definitely a big takeaway for me from that Setting the Table book.
So good. It kind of goes in with my last question for you here. I've enjoyed talking with you so much about this, following up after you being open. Since you've been open for 7 months now, I wonder what advice you would give to other coffee shop, let's say, entrepreneurs who what to expect and what should they be prepared for? What kind of message would you want to give them to help them out?
Great question. I think for me, one of the big ones that has been, I don't know if it's eye-opening, but just something that has really been a good lesson to learn is, be open to change. You may have this, very boiled down idea of how you want your shop to be, what types of coffee you want to serve, how you want to present that to the guest, how you're going to, what type of music you're going to play, all these types of things that you want to be, because it's your shop and you want it to be a representation of you and your personality. I think the big thing there is be open to your customers and what they're telling you, and be open to your employees. Now, it's a fine balance. I don't mean that, listen to every customer, because I'll tell you, I did that in the first month where I have a customer that says, oh, do you carry this kind of, weird fermented tea or whatever it is? And I'd go and try to source that and find some tea that is, really expensive, put it on the menu. And I had that one customer come back one time and they ordered it, but after that, nobody else has ordered it. So I don't, it's a balance there. But a perfect example of this is when we first opened, I had an espresso blend that from Corvus Coffee here, and they're the primary roaster that we use. And it was a Kenyan Colombian blend. I loved it. It is somewhat complex because of the Kenyan piece, but it adds a nice acidity to the open and the first drink of the espresso, and and then it smooths out with the Colombian. But it also is tricky to dial in, and quite a few of our customers had come back and said they just weren't really digging the acidity or the brightness of it. And no matter what we did to kind of tweak that or change that, it wasn't exactly what they were looking for. And so just through a happy accident, we ended up having to change espresso one time. Happy accident meaning that I didn't order enough of that kind. And so we put a Brazilian on espresso that day, and we had a lot of customers that really liked it, and it was just a smoother, more approachable coffee, and it actually turned out to be a little bit cheaper in terms of supply cost. And so that became our new go-to. And it actually worked out great, because then it also was a little bit easier to dial in, didn't present as much complexity in terms of, if somebody ordered an espresso versus a latte versus an Americano, is that, it all was pretty even keel and a good coffee that all of our customers liked, as opposed to the coffee that I liked and maybe not as many customers liked. So I think it is a fine balance. And similarly, I guess one other thing I would say, just another example, I don't know if you know the Shop Barista Parlor in Nashville. I don't know those guys. I follow them on Instagram, and I always thought, man, those guys are cool with the vinyl. They're playing records all the time. And I thought, that's definitely what I'm going to do. I'm going to have records on. I can't tell you how painful that would be if I had records now playing, seeing how busy we are at various times, that we'd have dead air, because nobody would be able to get back to flip the record over. It sounded a lot cooler than I think it was practical when I first. I mean, I can go back and look at the business plan now, and there's a lot of things in there about I want the warm sounds of analog vinyl and all of this, and it sounds awesome. But when you're in it, you've got to be ready to make that adjustment, and having a Pandora station or another music source or something that is playing and keeps playing while you're helping those customers for the next hour is going to be your friend.
So slashing those things that at the time they meant the most to you, or you really sounded good but was not practical.
Yeah, that and I think the other thing, and I kind of alluded to it with the coffee, but I may love African coffees or certain types of coffees. That's not necessarily going to be everybody's cup of tea. You do want to be able to have something that is available for the larger population of your customers. And don't get me wrong, we still do have a guest roaster that we bring in, and that's where we'll try to highlight other types of coffees, maybe other unique coffees, maybe that are a little more complex or a little bit different for people. So that I do offer some options, but I think sometimes appealing, I don't want to call it the lowest common denominator, but appealing to the larger group of your customer base is going to be in your best interest.
Well put. Yeah. I love it. This is all just great advice, and obviously born from very recent experiences. And I'm really grateful that we got the opportunity to catch you on both sides of your business. And it sounds like it's going really well. What's next for Torpedo?
So next, we've got the summer coming up. That's going to be its own challenges, right? Just understanding. I got a little bit of a taste of it there in September, but now seeing kind of what does it look like to have a coffee shop when it's warm and hot outside, and when school's out, what does that change, to the numbers? How does the day-to-day change? And so I think that's first and foremost. We've got the complex that we're in, or the strip that we're in, I guess, is going to be doing a farmer's market on on Thursdays. So we'll see what that looks like. And then we've got a couple other businesses opening in the area. And so all of that I'm hoping will help to increase foot traffic and ultimately increase people coming in. So that's definitely first and foremost. The other big one that we're doing is we just happen to have somebody come into the shop that lived in the neighborhood that actually had a shop in a different neighborhood, and were looking to kind of maybe move on from their business. So it looks like we're most likely, assuming some things go through this next week, that we'll be looking at a second location.
Wow.
Here in Denver.
That's intense.
Yeah, for sure. It's not anything that I had in the plan, but it's one of those, be ready when life gives you good opportunities. And this is an opportunity that's too good to kind of pass up.
Wow. Well, more power to you. That sounds amazing. Tell us how we can stay in touch with you and, just what your website and social media.
Website torpedocoffee.com. It's got all of the kind of basics about the shop. It does have a link to our Instagram feed there, but I'm an email-wise, Kyle at Torpedo Coffee. You can find us at Facebook, Torpedo Coffee, and Instagram, Torpedo Coffee. All of those, luckily I was able to secure that. So there isn't any extra symbols or numbers or anything that I had to add to that. So,
Yeah.
So I, like I said, email Kyle at torpedocoffee.com, or you can contact me through the website. That's where our Instagram is as well.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Kyle. This has really been an excellent time, and I've really enjoyed getting to hear the story about what's happened over the last 7 months, and no doubt what you've gone through and what you've accomplished has, as you've articulated it here, has definitely helped some people going through or about to go through the same process. So look forward to seeing more of the great stuff you're doing in Denver. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate everything that you're doing with this show, and it's been definitely a valuable asset to be able to tune in and even just pick and choose from whether it's show notes or your various episodes. I can't tell you how beneficial that has been leading up to all of this.
I appreciate that. Thank you, man.
Yep. We'll talk to you later.
Well, one of the things that I really love about hearing Kyle talk before and after this process is the consistency with which he has executed the vision of having this be a really highly communicative and co-created space, both by paying attention to the customers and their desires and meeting their needs, as well as allowing the staff that he has around him to help take part in the creation of what Torpedo Coffee is going to be. Of course, you can tell by listening to Kyle talk. Once he has a pretty good idea of what he wants, execution is not an issue. And you would imagine that giving away authority and giving away creative control in some areas would be difficult. And I'm not saying it wasn't difficult, but to actually do it, it takes a lot of courage to do that when this is your dream. And you've got to put trust in your people. And we've said it on the show before, that really inspires trust in them for you. And it was so great to hear about how Torpedo has taken shape, how the community has really taken to it, and knowing the kind of values that are driving it, even in this first 7 months, really bodes well for their future. So to Kyle, I say thank you so much for allowing us to be a part of your journey of realizing this dream of opening a coffee shop and running a coffee shop. It's really been great to be kind of a fly on the wall of your process a little bit. It's been illuminating, and we're really grateful for your example in Torpedo Coffee. Again, you can go to torpedocoffee.com, go to Torpedo Coffee and pretty much any of the social media, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. If you're in Denver, definitely go check them out, have some coffee, have some food, and experience the coffee connection and community that Kyle is building through Torpedo Coffee. Now, if you want to reach out to me, you want to email me to talk about feedback, comments, questions about the show, If you want to inquire about Keys to the Shop consulting for your business, go ahead and email me at chris@keystotheshop.com. That's CHRIS at keystotheshop.com. I would also encourage you to subscribe to Keys to the Shop if you have not already done so. Maybe leave a rating or review on iTunes. That would be awesome. And also, the Indianapolis Coffee Fest is going to be coming up very, very shortly. I would encourage you to go to coffeefest.com and check out the Indianapolis show if you're in the Midwest area and you want to go to our industry's best trade show for coffee retail, then you've hit the mother lode with Coffee Fest. I speak there about 4 times on different topics in lectures and in campfire talks. I also judge latte art, and I would love to meet you there. It's May 31st through June 1st, and right now you can sign up to get $30 registration. That's going to be cheaper than when it gets closer to the event. So coffeefest.com. I hope to see you there. Well, that's it for today's show. Thank you so much for joining me on this inaugural before and after episode. We're going to be having another one of these later in the year, hopefully, maybe in the beginning of next year. But, these take time, and they are totally worth it. And I hope that this was, again, very helpful for you. And of course, I hope that this episode has truly given you keys to the shop.